Okay, welcome back to Strength Coach Tutorials, and in today's tutorial we're going to take a look at how to make our programming templates functional with regards to sets and rep schemes. So what I'm talking about here is, if you can see down the right hand side, I have a bunch of different sets and rep schemes saved: 5x5 at 80%, 4x3 at 50%, 3x3 at 85%, etc. And when I go over here to my programming template, I can select any of those set and rep schemes, and it's going to put them into my programming template. Now, the reason that this is special is that if I wanted to overlap set and rep schemes for any reason, I have the ability to do that based on this template. The way that the formulas are set up, it's going to allow me to do that, and this is going to give you a lot of flexibility in how you actually program your set and rep schemes and save your set and rep schemes for your programming card. So let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the sheet sort of organized a certain way, and that's just going to make it easier for me when I'm using the formulas and things that are going to make this sheet work. Now, the way that this is set up right now is you have sets, reps, and load. And this is the way that I might want to organize my workout card. And easily this could be week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, or we might want to have in here meters per second for velocity-based training, or we might want to have a relative intensity or a maximum value or any number of things. So there's a lot of ways that we can kind of do this, but I'm going to show you an easy way to pull in these sets and rep schemes. Now, typically when this is done in programming cards, the function that's used is going to be something like a VLOOKUP or an index match. And I mean, that'll work just fine. But the only problem with that is that you have to know exactly where your set and rep scheme is going to go and exactly where you want to pull it in. The way that I've got it set up in this video is going to give you a lot more flexibility in terms of, if I wanted to put my set and rep scheme in the first box and then the next one in the second box, it's going to allow me to do that. And it's not going to back me into a corner when I go to set up my programming doc, so that I can program really any way that I want to for my athletes. And I don't always have to use sets that have 5 sets or 3 sets or anything like that. So this is the way that I like to do it on my set and rep scheme sheets, and I just thought it would be useful to show everyone else. Then the other thing I want to say is that if you are enjoying these videos, please, as they say on YouTube, smash that subscribe button, because that really helps me out. And we actually hit an awesome milestone today of just over 2,000 subscribers on the channel. So this channel's come a long way since we first started, and it's been awesome that way. Okay, so let's get into this. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to have a place that I can actually store my set and rep schemes. So all I've done is I've created these same titles over here: set, rep, and load, and then I put a row for a column for set and rep name, and that's where I'm actually going to name my set rep schemes. And then I just have another identifier column for rows, and I'll show you what that means in a second. So I have one saved over here. Let's just take this one. I'm going to copy and paste that in there. 5x5 at 80%. I'm going to paste these in. So what you can see is set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4, set 5, all times 5. And then the load is 0.8 or 80%. I can convert this to a percentage if I want to. Let's just go ahead and do that now, just so it looks better. So there you go. 5x5 at 80%. Now for the rows column, what I'm going to put in there is the amount of actual rows that this set and rep scheme takes. So in this case, it takes 5. So I'm going to put that in there. And now that we know how this kind of works, I have some other ones saved here, and that's just going to allow us to test the sheet. And I'm just going to paste those in there. So we have 4x3 at 50%, 3x3 at 85%, 10x2 to 3 at 50%. This is the way that we might want to go about this. And the reason I've chosen to do these sets and rep schemes, as you can see, we have one that takes 5 rows, one that takes 4 rows, one that takes 3, and then one that only takes 1 row. This is going to allow us to test sort of the robustness of our formulas when we actually create the sheet. Then the next thing that we're going to do here is I'm actually going to turn this into a table. And when I turn it into a table, it just makes it a lot easier for me to reference, so that when I'm going to pull them into here, I can just reference the table and I don't have to reference any individual cell. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all of it, including the titles up here, and I'm going to put format as table. I'll choose this one. It looks fine. I'm going to select that my table has headers, hit OK. So now you can see that this is all saved in a table. And if I type at the bottom, it's going to actually keep adding table rows. So I'm going to delete those out. I just right click and delete. And I should also say that this variation is only going to work if you're using Microsoft 365, because it is going to take advantage of some of the new array functions in Microsoft 365. Anyways, moving on. So we have our table. What I want to do is name this. So table design up at the top right. I'm going to use the same naming structure that I always do. So TBL set rep. And I just type that in the top left corner here. I'll just hit enter. And now this table is called table set rep. What I could do is I could go to the bottom, put TBL set rep, and type that in. And what it'll do is actually pull out the whole table. That's one way that we can pull out the table, and you can tell if your actual functionality works. And then if I just delete this top one, it'll take everything away. But moving on, the next thing we have to do is actually set up our validation or our drop-down menus over here so that we can pull out the values for our table, or sorry, for our set and rep schemes. So I'm going to use a function over here, and I'm just going to pull them out over here. But typically, if I was doing this to make a big sheet, I would have this on another sheet, maybe call it like a control panel or a settings sheet or something, and I would just have all my lists and things on the same sheet so that they're out of the way and not going to be printed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a function that I've used in a few videos now called filter, and we're going to put equals filter. And these new dynamic array functions are super powerful. And what I want to filter out is the table set and rep scheme table name. Okay, so I just click here and you can see it's going to say table set and rep scheme square brackets set table name. And I'm going to put a comma, and I want to filter out any one, select that again, that does not equal. So I put two triangles opening up towards each other, a greater than or a less than opening up towards each other, and then any one that does not equal blank, which is double quotation marks, and then I can close that off. And then if it's empty, I don't care because I'm filtering all those out, and I can close that off and hit enter. And what do you know? It's going to pull out all of the names of all the sets and rep schemes that we have in there, ignoring any of the blank cells. Okay, and that's an easy way to do that. And if I just want to be absolutely sure that it's not going to have a wonky value in there, I'm just going to wrap this in an if error formula. All that does is at the front of the filter, I'm just going to put if error and open that up, and then at the end, comma, and if there is an error, I'm just going to put two quotation marks and then close it off. So all that means is if there's an error in the function, I just want it to show nothing. So that's good. Now what we have to do is we're going to create a data validation here. And I've already actually done it, so it's going to work, but I'll show you how I did that. I'm going to create a named range. Okay, so up here, I'm going to go to data, formulas, define name, and we're going to call this set rep schemes. I'm going to copy that, and all I want that to refer to is P5, which is where that first one is stored, but I want it to refer to all of the ones that we pull out. So if I just put a hashtag after P5, what it's telling it is that I want it to refer to this whole dynamic array. Hit OK, and then I can do my data validation over here. I can go data, I can click on B5, hit data validation, and I'm going to have that equal set rep schemes that we just kind of figured out. Hit OK, and it's actually going to pull out any of the set and rep schemes that we want. So I can just hit data and then pull any of those out. And the way that I know that that's working is I can type in another one here. When I go to pull it out, I can pull out this is working. Okay, so now we know that that works fine. Okay, so we now have a way to select the set and rep scheme that we actually want. The next thing that I want to do is I actually have to pull out the rows. Okay, so, or an easier way to look at it is how many rows that it's actually going to occupy. So you can see that some of them are going to occupy 5 rows, where other ones are going to occupy 4 and 3 and so on. So I need to create a formula that basically looks in this table, and if it's going to occupy 5 rows, it's going to put a value in 5 rows for me and then leave the rest blank. or if it's going to occupy 3 rows, it's going to put a value in there and leave the rest blank. So basically this is like the number of sets formula, and it's kind of a funky formula. So there's going to be a lot going on here, but we're going to use a function called ifs. And what ifs does is it allows us to actually select what we're going to do based on different criteria. So if this is true, then we're going to do this. But if this is true, then we're going to do that. And we're going to basically search a bunch of different things to see what's true and then pull out values based on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put equals ifs, open that up, and we're going to type in the following formula. So the first thing we want to look for is we want to look if there's actually anything even in B5. So we want to look to see if we've selected anything. So I'm going to select B5, and we want to see if that does not equal nothing. So if it doesn't equal nothing, that means there's something in it, and we want to look up what is in there. So I'm going to use a formula called XLOOKUP, and I'm going to open that up, and the value that I want to look up is B5. And where do I want to look that up? I want to look that up in the set and rep category here. And then I'm going to put another comma. And it's going to ask me what I actually want to return. And I would actually like to return the rows because I want to know how many rows it's going to take out. Or sorry, take up. And I'm going to select that. And then comma. And then it's going to ask me if it's not found, I just want it to show nothing. I want an exact match, so I'm going to use 0 here, another comma, and then I don't care if it searches first to last or last to first. Okay, and then I close that off, and I'll actually close off the ifs, and we'll see if that's working. So we can see that that works, because if I chose the 5x5 at 80, you can see that it's pulling out rows 5. If I choose the 4x3 at 50, you can see that it's pulling out rows 4. Okay, so the first part of our formula is working. Now, I will say that the only thing that is going to break this formula, at least from my testing, is if you have 2 set and rep schemes that are called the same thing, but I don't see a situation when you would ever have that, because if you have one, that should be enough. So let's continue on with this formula. I'm going to put another comma after this because you can see in the formula it's asking me what the logical test is, in this case if B5 doesn't equal anything, and then the value if it's true. We got to put some more features in this here. So I'm going to put another comma in there. What's my second logical test? Well, I want to look at whether C4, which is the value here, minus 1, is greater than 0. And the reason that we want to do that is because what we're going to create here is a counter that counts 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or 4, 3, 2, 1. And when it gets to 0, I want it to actually stop. Okay, so I want it to just show a blank cell. So what we have to do is we have to search to see if the one above minus 1 is equal to 0. And if it is, that would mean that we are going to stop here, and we'd want to put a 0 in that. Okay, so what I want to do here is if C4 minus 1 is greater than 0, and I know that it's not going to be the ending value, I'm going to comma that, and actually what I want it to do is display C4 minus 1. And then I'm going to hit enter. So it's still going to give me 5 because in this case the first value is true, but what happens if we drag it down? It's going to give me a 4 because there's nothing here to search for. So what it's going to do is take the next one up, minus 1, it's still greater than 0, so it's going to give me a 4. And then if I drag it down, it should give me a 3, a 2, a 1, and then if I drag it down again, it'll give me an NA. Okay, so instead of NA, we want this to actually be nothing. We want it to be blank. So an easy way whenever you see an error to get rid of an error and make it blank is just to use an if error formula. So I'm going to wrap the whole thing in an if error. So I'm going to put if error, open that up, and then at the end, comma, close it off, because if there is an error, I want it to show blank. Hit enter, and you can see that's now gone away. And I'm going to drag this back up. And because we have all these cell references open, there's no $signs on them, we should be able to drag this formula all the way down and it should work fine. So let's test it. 5x5 at 80, We want to count how many rows there are, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That works great. If we were to choose 4 by 3 at 50, we should have 4, 3, 2, 1, great. 3 by 3 at 85, 3, 2, 1, great. 10 by 2 to 3 at 50, we should have, okay. Now, does it work in other places? Yep, it seems to work sort of wherever we are. So that gives us a lot of flexibility here now to kind of program out our sets and rep schemes. Okay, what happens if we overlap it? Well, we know that the first thing we're going to get it to do is actually search to see if there's anything in this box. So we can test that, and you can see it actually just starts the counter all over again if we put another value in there. Okay, so that's a good start. Now that we have that, we know how many actual rows that there's going to be. In this case, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there's going to be 5 rows, and 5 of them are going to be taken up. Now we actually have to figure out what the actual row numbers they're going to be. So in this case, this would be row 1, row 2, row 3, 4, 5. And we have to be able to return what rows our sets and rep schemes actually sit. So this is a much longer formula, but we're going to reference the cell that we already created so that we know where we're going with this. So bear with me here. This might be kind of confusing, but as long as you have the formula right, it's going to work. So I'm going to hit equals. We're going to use that ifs function again, and we need to search for a few different things. So ifs, open that up. The first test that we want to search for is B5. Again, if that doesn't equal nothing, then what we want to do is I want to match that again. X match, open that up, and where do we want to match it? We want to match B5. We want to match it in the actual set and rep schemes, and open that up. And then what do we want to actually return? Match mode, we want a 0 for exact match, and then another one. I don't really care if it searches first to last or last to first. So I'm going to close that off. Close that off. So I close that off, and you can see that it's going to actually give me the row number that's in. Sorry. Instead of the X lookup formula, I should have said we're using the X match formula. So what the X match formula does is actually returns the row. Okay, so it's the same as X lookup, but instead of returning the value, it's actually going to return the row that it sits in. So what we've done here is if B5 doesn't equal anything, then if B5 doesn't equal blank, then we want to match what's in B5 and return the row. So we want to match B5 and return the row, and then we hit OK. So in this case, it's in row 1, and we can check to see if that's working, because if I select 4 by 3, it's actually going to give me the 7th row, 3 by 3, the 12th row, etc. So let's put that back, and we'll add the second part to our formula. Now is where it gets a little bit confusing. Now we have to search for two things at the same time. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to say if C5, so if the value right beside it is greater than C4, okay, and close that off, and then I can use the times function or the star because I want two things together, and C4 does not equal nothing. So what we're looking for is if C5 is greater than C4, okay, and C4 does not equal nothing, which would signify now that this is the start of, this would signify that this is the start of a new set and rep scheme. What we want to do there is we actually want to add one, D4, to the one above, because we want to be counting up now instead of down. So we want to add one, so we want D4 plus 1, comma. We need one more logical test to make this work. And in this case, we're going to look for a few different things. The first, we need a couple more logical tests, The next one we want is C5 equals nothing. So if C5 is blank, then we know we want to be blank. So that's an easy one. And then the last one we want is an OR function. So we're searching to see if one of the following things has happened. So we're going to use OR, open that up. If C4 is greater than C5, okay, comma, or if C4 equals C5, and this is just covering off all conditions, and we'll kind of work through this in a second, or we're going to use that times function again. C5 is greater than C4, and with the times, B5, which is where we store our value, does not equal nothing. close that off. And then what do we want to do if any of these come true? We want to match our table set and rep scheme again. So I'm going to select this X match, and I'm going to paste that in at the end. And if I'm not mistaken, if I close that off, that should work okay. And then when I drag this down, we should almost get the values in reverse order. So what we've done here, so let's look at this. We'll look through this one more time. So if B5 does not equal nothing, then we want to match the row for the table, for the set and rep scheme that we've selected. Great. So if that doesn't work, then the next thing we're looking for is C5 less than C4. Okay. And C4 doesn't equal nothing. So that covers off a situation down here where the set and rep scheme has ended, okay, or it covers off like the last one. So basically what we're doing is if this is still counting down, then we want this one to still count up, okay? That's how that kind of works. But if we get to a point where there's nothing here, we don't want anything here either. Okay, so then that's our last one. Then if C5 is blank, just be blank, okay? So if this side's blank, then we just want this one blank too, because that means there's an end of a set and rep scheme or nothing there. Now we're looking for a few different conditions to cover off any weird things that might pop up. So if C4 is greater than C5, okay, which would mean in a situation like this, where we've kind of overlapped our set and rep schemes, now C4 might, or C6 might be bigger than C5, okay? So that would cover that condition. Or they're equal to each other in the case of if we overlapped again and they both equaled 5. Or C5 is greater than C4, but B5 is not empty. So what that would cover off is in a situation like this, where maybe we've selected a 4x3 and it's only 4 rows here, but here we need to select a 5x5. So now this one is greater than that one, but we know that it's not wonky because we've selected another set and rep scheme. So if that's the case, then we need to match the row for the new set and rep scheme. So you can see it just starts all over. Okay, so let's go back to the formula. So if any of that stuff is true, then we just need to match that row and bring that new row in, because we've selected another set and rep scheme too close to the one we've already got in there. Okay, and then I'm also just going to wrap this one in an if error as well. Comma, okay, hit enter, and I'm just going to drag that down, so that should work perfectly. Okay, so basically what have we done here? We figured out that when I select a set and rep scheme, we're going to count down how many rows that set and rep scheme actually takes, and then use that to actually identify which rows it actually sits within. And we can do that now for any of our set and rep schemes, and they will take up the appropriate number of rows. Now we have to translate this information into pulling out the actual information from the table that we need into our sets and rep programming chart over here. So this formula is actually really easy compared to the other ones because all of the hard calculations are already being done. So this is just a simple index formula. So index basically is just pulling out data that we're looking for. So I'm going to use index, open that up, and what do I want to pull out? I want to pull out from sets all the way to load. So I'm going to highlight these cells and you can see what it's done. Table set rep, set, and then double dots, and then load. That means I want to pull out all these 3 rows. So when I return a value, it's going to take up 3 rows, comma. And what row number do I actually want to pull out? Well, we just pulled out what row number is. So in this case, it's D5. This formula is not working very well because it's written over top of where the cell reference is. So I just typed in D5, but we want to pull out these row numbers here. And column number doesn't matter. I'm just going to put 0. Area number doesn't matter, so I can just close that off and hit enter. And what do you know? It's going to pull that out. So what have we done? We've pulled out table set rep from sets all the way to load, row D5. Okay, we've gone to column 0, which just means we start at the first one that we're actually looking at. So if I drag this all the way down, what you'll see is it's actually going to fill in all of our sets and reps, and it's dragged the formatting down with it. So I'm just going to fix that quickly. one. So I'll fix that up quickly. It seems to work pretty well, except for these ugly values. So what did I tell you about when we have an error in there? An easy way to get rid of an error is we're just going to wrap this whole thing back in an if error. And open that up, comma, double bracket at the end, hit OK. And I'm going to drag this back down, and you can see those ugly values are gone. So I'm going to fix the border one more time. I should have waited. Hit OK. And it works. So now we should be able to select any of our set and rep schemes, and it's going to pull out the whole darn thing because it is always referencing this cell right here and the row in this cell right here. So if I pull out this one, you can see that it just fits in there perfectly. And let's make sure that it's working. So we'll add another couple rows here. Let's say we want 5 times 8 to 10 at RPE 6. So we're going to go 5 rows, 8 to 10. Sets, we want, this will be number 1. It's converted to a date because I used the dashes there. I just need it to be normal. This will be set 1, set 2, 3, 4, 5. And we want 8 to 10. But it's going to turn that into a date. This was a terrible example. I'll turn this back into text. And I'm going to copy that all the way down. And because of the way we've actually referenced this, I should be able to type in RPE 6. And I should be able to select that right away and it should work fine. So there you go. 8 to 10 at RPE 6. So, I mean, that seems to work really well, and we can just add more set and rep schemes as we go, and away we go. Now, it'd be really easy just to filter these by the type of set and rep scheme, hypertrophy or strength or whatever. We would just add another box in here and give it a category and then pull them out based on the category and be able to select them over here based on the category. So there you go. That's an easy way, well, maybe not so easy way to pull in your set and rep schemes into your programming template. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, please share it, and there are also going to be links in the description for some of my favorite resources, as well as some links to purchase some of the spreadsheets that I have already made. As always, if you have any ideas for future videos, please leave them in the comments below or feel free to reach out to me. I'm always trying to look for inspiration and try to create things that are going to help coaches. So I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.